Did the Russian royal family come to a violent end at the hands of Bolshevik executioners? Or could the legends be true? Did two of Tsar Nicholas's children survive? Forensic anthropologist Anthony Falsetti and DNA expert Michael Coble are about to get their first look at the bones that may solve this case. Under lock and key in the Yekaterinburg morgue, access to these potentially royal remains is tightly controlled. In 2000, the Russian Orthodox Church canonized the Romanovs as martyrs. And these bones, if authenticated, could become holy relics. Falsetti is no stranger to these halls. He was part of the original team assembled in the 1990s to investigate the first set of Romanov bones. Investigations that were contentious. The findings were controversial and disputed in full view of the press. Russian scientists used facial reconstruction techniques to claim that one of the bodies was that of Anastasia, but others were unconvinced. Still more troubling, the body count discrepancy.
Two bodies are still missing.
Was this the true grave if two bodies were missing? Accusations of political influence in the rush to identification polluted the air. In the end, the Russian Orthodox Church rejected DNA evidence as tainted and refused to acknowledge that the uncovered remains were in fact the Romanovs. But now, this new find could change all that. And this time, the team is eager to avoid the media circus of 1991. But the Romanov mystery is once again big news.
We arrive into the lab, and there's a massive number of cameras and people doing interviews while we're trying to look at the remains.
It's a media circus. I don't think these people have any understanding of contamination, the potential for breakage of these samples, and just losing them under all of this chaos.
Are the conditions good enough for you?
If these are the Romanovs, they were used to being photographed, but I'm not sure why they're willing to compromise the forensic science by that. That's worrisome.
The start of the investigation will make the evening news. But once the media leave, it becomes clear that there is a real problem.
Once the cameras are gone, we get down to work. And what I discover is that these 44 fragments, many we're not going to be able to identify as being human. Perhaps they're not. There's just not enough material here.
These shattered remains look nothing like the nearly intact skeletons found in 1991. Broken, almost unrecognizable. But careful inspection by expert eyes reveals that the fragmentary remains are human. But who are they the remains of? Are these the bones of Alexei, Maria, or Anastasia? Or someone else entirely?
The mystery within the mystery is what happened to Anastasia. Did she escape? Or is she here? Right now, I can't tell whether I have two females or a male and a female, or whether these fragments are part of the other bones that were already recovered.
Touching and photographing what may be the bones of saints is a delicate matter. Each fragment must be handled with the greatest respect and sensitivity. Falsetti has now had time to examine every piece and has made a breakthrough.
It doesn't look like much. It is a portion of the pelvis. It is our os cox. And as it turns out, it is from a female. We can deduce that by the sciatic notch. In males, it would be more narrow. In females,
it is quite wide. That is critical. We know we have two people. Now we know that one of them is a female.
A male and a female. Body parts from two individuals. But are they the missing Romanov children? Falsetti and the forensic anthropologists will have to dig deeper. For Mike Coble and the DNA team, there is another problem. These bones show evidence of burning.
Looking at the remains, I'm beginning to think this is going to be a very difficult case. When the bone is burned, there's a lot of heat generated, which is not very good for DNA.
Take our sample from down here, 2.5, 3 centimeter cut.
Coble has selected the bones most likely to yield readable DNA. Minute pieces will be cut off and sent to his lab in America and to others around the world for independent analysis.
These are the fragments that we think would have the highest degree of success.
But teasing out the 90-year-old genes that may lie dormant in the fragments will take weeks. And the chances that the DNA has survived intact are slim. Coble heads back to the US to await the arrival of the bones. But Falsetti stays behind to look for other clues that could solve the case if the DNA work is inconclusive. A few pieces of badly damaged bone offer the forensics expert little to go on. But in the town where the Romanov family met their end, there are more leads to follow up. Local archaeologist Sergei Pogorelov was one of the diggers who found the bones in 2007. This is the missing evidence taken from the grave in the forest. Among the artifacts recovered are fragments of a wooden crate, quantities of ash, and some pieces of pottery. Each is a clue to what might have happened. The ash corroborates the burn marks on the bones. A picture is beginning to form.
What kind of container do you think?
The pottery shards are perhaps the most compelling, as similar shards were found in the 1991 grave.
So these are the ones from 1991?
Okay. Это 91 года.
It is the first suggestion of a link between the grave sites. But this is far from conclusive. Tying this evidence into a narrative of what happened at the scene 90 years earlier will force Falsetti to look elsewhere. But the answer to the lost bones' identity and to what really happened to Anastasia and the rest of the Romanov children may be inside this box. These are the samples Dr. Michael Coble selected back at the Yekaterinburg morgue. They've made the 5,400-mile journey to the United States, sealed in contamination-proof containers. Other samples are on their way to Austria and other labs around the world. The package is brought into a clean room. At every turn, procedure is followed to ensure that the integrity of the samples remains uncompromised. Inside, tiny samples, a few grams each. Are these the remains of Alexei, Maria, or Anastasia? Putting names to these newly discovered bones will hinge on whether or not DNA from these samples can be traced back through the generations to genetic markers shared by a very select group of people, the intermarried households of European royalty. The Romanov children, like the modern royal family of England, descend from Queen Victoria, and the DNA in this royal bloodline bears unique identifying genetic characteristics. Coble and his team are used to dealing with the remains of modern warriors, but these bones are nearly a century old. Teasing DNA out of these fragments will not be easy. DNA is fragile, easily damaged by the ravages of time. They've endured almost a century below ground in one of the most challenging climates in the world, minus 40 degrees in winter and above 100 Fahrenheit in summer. Finding an intact sequence for identification will mean destroying the bone almost completely. This is all that is left, precious little. If this test is inconclusive, Koebel might not have enough to run a second test, and the bodies may never be identified.